Hello and welcome to Off the Fence, brought to you in association with Bet365. This is normally a weekly rundown of all things jump racing, and it still is this week, but of course it's a touch different because we haven't had very much jump racing over the last 7 days. As a result, we're going to spend a good bit of time looking forward to what is a jam-packed weekend, but we're also going to get stuck into a good few of your questions because this week you sent in some brilliant questions covering lots of different topics. We're going to utilise Barry and Tony as always and get some of them answered to kick off the show. As an FYI, a lot of you have asked about Champ, and we will of course be talking about Champ but a bit later in the show when we cover the weekend's action upcoming, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we can crack straight on and go to Moody Millennial, who was asked, after Allmankind's performance on Monday, who do you like for the Arkle? Energumen by a couple of lengths for me, she says, or he says, I don't know who. Allmankind is currently 8-1 for the Arkle after winning the Grade 2 today. Barry, what did you make of that performance for starters? And I know you're a big Energumen fan, but Allmankind is going to make his task a fair bit trickier come Cheltenham, I think.
He will. He definitely adds a bit of spice to it as regards the pace of the race. But the results of the race in Warwick, it reads really well. He beat, what did he beat again? He beat Sky Pirate by 17 lengths and he beat Cheltenham by 22 further back in third. So it reads really well. But his jumping just wasn't as good as it has been his previous runs. And his jumping was his strong point, if you like. He was brilliant in Sandown. He was brilliant before that in Warwick. But this time just wasn't as good. He seemed to be a little bit on edge. He guessed at a few. He was low at fences. For me, he'd need to jump an awful lot better to trouble the top two in the Arkle.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in commentary, as the commentator said, that he was fast and slick over his fences, and this was pre him making that mistake 2 out. But I didn't think it was fast and slick. I thought, like you said, it was quite guessy, and he's not going to get away with that at championship level, is he?
No, he won't. And Cheltenham with the pace of the race, but you're turning and jumping constantly. You're not down over a line of fences as such. So down the back straight, and he's going to have an Energumen breathing down his neck, who's probably going to be floating over fences. I don't think it's going... His jumping in Warwick this time wasn't good enough, where his jumping was a strong suit before this. He had a bit of a gap to bridge, I thought, with the top two in the market, and his jumping was his strong point, but I think that let him down in Warwick, so he needs to go back to the old Allmankind that we saw in Sandown and Warwick previously.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the Skeletons have said on record that when they first jumped Allmankind, he was, I think, a bit scary to watch. So anyway, hopefully they can get him back on track a little bit in that department for Cheltenham. Let's move straight on to Adam, who's asked, if Davy is back for Cheltenham, do you see him riding the majority of Gordon's horses, or will Jack continue? Main rides would be Abracadabras, Envoy Allen, Quilixios, Ballyadam. Interested to see how that pans out. I also am very interested to see how that pans out. Barry, what do you see for that situation?
It's not straightforward, but I suppose the most important thing is for Davy to get back sooner rather than later and make his presence felt. If he's only back 10 days before Cheltenham and he's riding 1 or 2 here and gets to ride a winner, it's not the ideal preparation. Jack is 3 from 3 and Envoy Allen, he's 2 from 2, Quilixios, same with Zana here. Ballyadam, he's done really well on everything, and Jack is a brilliant rider. It'd be very hard to take him off these horses for Davy, who's maybe, if he hasn't got his match fitness proven. So it's a tricky one for Gordon. It's also a very tricky one for the owners as well. So it's going to be difficult, but he's going to have multiple runners in races. He could run the 2 and the Triumph, which will make an easy decision maybe for him there, and he could have a couple in the Stairs Hurdle. But it'll be interesting to see. I think a lot of people are watching Envoy Allen and wondering what's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. Tony, how do you think that's going to pan out? And from your point of view, if you've backed one of these horses, do you want to see Jack Kennedy still on him, or do you want the experience of Davy Russell?
Very interesting conversation to have. I thought Davy gave a very good interview on Nick Luck yesterday. One of the things that he did raise that I thought was interesting, he seems to have lost a bit of condition. He was kind of saying his core has got a good bit weaker because he was in traction for quite a long time. It wasn't kind of a standard injury maybe where you could do a little bit with maybe parts of your body or do this and that. He says he always felt that was a strength of his, but after this it has weakened a little bit. I thought that was quite interesting. I would be kind of looking at it from the Jack Kennedy point of view. Davy does seem to be on a promise that he's going to be getting a lot of these rides back from Gordon. There seemed to be the implication in that interview yesterday, but I would feel for Jack Kennedy, like I think Jack Kennedy is the best around myself. Like, I say this in a nice, well possible way. Like, Jack Kennedy's just dead inside. Like, the chap is just ice cold. I remember doing a Cheltenham preview night with Jack Kennedy before he was really Jack Kennedy. Like, I was trying to knock a bit of crack out of him. Like, it was getting blood out of a stone. And you know what? That's exactly who I'd want riding me horse, because he just is emotionless. He was on there. There was a bit of hassle there when he was due to ride Delta work coming back at Christmas, and there was he going to ride him? Was he not going to ride him? It was up to the last minute, and Brian Gleeson got him on, interviewed him maybe half an hour to quarters of an hour before the race, and I'd say with a lot of people, they would have been inclined maybe to throw someone under the bus, like who screwed up the x-rays, who said he was able to go, who said he wasn't able to go, but Jack just said, nah, it's grand, whatever. You know, it just didn't seem to bother him, doesn't seem to faze him. So, as Barry has kind of covered there, I think it would be probably important for Davy to get back for a few meetings to get riding a few at that time. But of course, then that comes at the time when maybe a lot of jockeys are trying to mind themselves in the week to 10 days before the meeting, between getting falls and one thing and another. So yeah, it's very interesting, and you know, you're talking about two top class jockeys, one of which has been going really well through the winter and one of which hasn't been seen. Davy's got the experience, but obviously Jack has ridden plenty of Cheltenham winners as well and plenty of big winners. So yeah, I wouldn't like to be making the phone call to tell one of them that they weren't getting the rides. Tough one.
Very tough indeed. And just a slight side note, and because you've brought it up there, Tony, just Barry, in terms of Jack Kennedy as a rider, I know it's been well covered, he's not an up-and-coming star, he's just a star full stop. But I saw, I think it was a tracker, dare I say, a tracker shot after our camera angle rant last week of Jack on Envoy Allen. And because of the way the tracker was going, you didn't know if a fence was approaching or not. And just the way his position in the saddle does not move. The way he keeps his hands on the wither and with his legs and his body. I mean, he was motionless to the fence and away from the fence. In terms of a talent, how good a talent do you think he is? Just as a personal note, Barry.
I know there is no doubt Jack is brilliant. Yeah, and he's got a beautiful pair of hands. Horses settle. You never see a horse pull with Jack. They settle and they jump, and the less he does, he doesn't interfere. He's very quiet. Envoy Allen is probably the nicest you'll get it in a novice chase. He's exceptional how clever he is. But Jack, day to day, he's brilliant. He wrote his 100th winner was I think it was a Grade 1 in Leopardstown. And myself and Ruby were there the same day and we were laughing. His 100 winner was a Grade 1. Neither of us had ridden a Grade 1 winner at that stage. We were 18, and he does 100 up. So in Ireland, that's massive. You could get that kind of momentum going in England. You mightn't get the Grade 1, but you'll get the numbers. But in Ireland, that's serious. So he is a massive talent, and he is, you know, if he stays in one piece, is his biggest problem. Obviously, Davy might be flying the ointment this year in Cheltenham, but staying in one piece is Jack's biggest problem for the last few seasons. But he is top class.
Yeah, here. Tony, back to you for the next question. Paul Smith has asked, which of the short price favourites for the festival, as in 3-1 or shorter, would you like to take on and why? They're not all going to win. Well, I agree with you, Paul. They're not all going to win. And Tony, I think you'd be taking on a fair few of them, but who would be top of your list to take on? Yeah,
I would say he's right about that. They're not all going to win. The three, when I looked this afternoon, just at sub threes, I'd be most keen to take on. Epperton in the champion hurdle, kind of covered how before. Kilcrit in the champion bumper. Talked to him a little bit last week. He's also going to be going into a full field of unexposed horses who can all improve massively. He hasn't run the track before. And who was the last one I've got written down here? Yeah, I'm kind of coming around to maybe I might take on Appreciated in the Supreme. So those three of the ones sub 3-1 I'd be maybe looking to oppose.
Like it a lot. Viewers, thank you very much for your questions so far, and please do keep them coming in, because our team behind the camera, they read them all, and it really helps us put our show together. And so all your views are appreciated, and we read them all. So Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you name it, hit subscribe. We love you all. Keep getting involved. Tony, it's back to you for the next question. John Mead has asked, is Elimay a good thing for the Mare's Chase? She's now 5-2 with Bet365 after winning at the weekend, Tony. She's going in the right direction. Was there I was going to say there's not many holes to pick in her form, so, as in what she's done so far on the track. Where would you be with Elimay? Do you think 5-2 for the Mare's Chase is about the right price?
Yeah, I'm keen right back there after Torres. Thought this was good. I hope I mentioned that when we were on here, but I did anyway. Yeah, I like the decision to run her here, get a little bit more chase experience into her, because while she is in her second season of fences, she only, I think, ran twice over fences as a novice. She's not the biggest. That, I think, would be the worry, but she does seem to jump quite athletically. She won well at Naas. I'd say the trip is a bit sharp for her there. It just wasn't maybe able to lay up with the other ones going up in front. But that's possibly a good thing, going up to 2.5 at Cheltenham. But when Mark did ask her, he didn't really have to ask her that much. She just went and picked them up very, very easily, and she was carrying lumpy penalty there in that race. So yeah, I think she's the one to beat. That's a race that has the potential to cut up. Where's Put the Kettle on going to go? Is Benny the Jew going to be in the race? Damn the Company, are they going to go over fences on the back of a fall? So no, she'd very much be the one to beat for me.
Like it. Big positive tick for Elimay from our Tony. Actually, we're going to stick with you, Tony, because whilst we're on question time, I believe you have a question for our very own Barry Geraghty, don't you?
Yes, a little bit of a question for Barry, just about the time of the year and things like that. I suppose most of the key trials have been run and done at this stage. And I suppose it's getting a bit early for jockeys to be minding themselves. But one thing I suppose jockeys are looking to do, especially jockeys with major jobs, is maybe pick their mounts. Now, I know some of them kind of pick themselves, the very obvious maybe from the betting or the form book. But Barry, maybe in the maybe more difficult decisions that you've had in your time, as particularly at the JP McManus job, when you would have been judging between horses in different yards. Like at this time of the year, how would you have picked them? Would you went back to the form? Would you looked at the videos? Would you went to different yards to ride work? And like, was there ever a decision you're really happy with, or one you said, geez, I got that one badly wrong? Could you tell us a wee bit about that?
Yeah, and no, always very difficult, and the different yards was always the hardest part, because you were getting great reports from both trainers, if you like, on their horse, or even a third trainer if there's three in the mix. So that was always difficult. But in fairness to JP and Frank, they'd put you on the right road. They probably had a good read of the trainers and know exactly, and obviously the form as well. So it's never straightforward. It's always easier when I was riding for Nicky. They were in the 1 yard. Spirit Sun, Sprinter, Sacre and the Supreme. That was the biggest struggle I had back a good few years ago now, and went with Spirit Sun, who finished just in front of Sprinter, but I'd say it was possibly on the wrong one. Sprinter might have just got it done on the day as well if he relaxed. But it's always difficult. I suppose the other one that stands out was the year I was injured and missed Cheltenham with a punctured lung. I was going to ride Janwart in the Champion Hurdle when Bouvardere won it, so I was happier sitting at home on a couch watching it than I would have been sitting on Janwart looking at Bouvardere.
How, Barry, actually, just on that topic, how late can you leave it? And do people want answers from you, whether it's owners or trainers? Do they want them quite early, like right about now? Or do you try and kick the can as far down the road and get as close to the meeting as you possibly can?
I'll kick the can as much as you can. I suppose when I was riding for JP, it was okay. Once I was riding one of his, which was the case. Nicky's, you would have some owners looking, to get a jockey booked, and like that with Santini, his owners wanted Aidan to have a sit in him before the Gold Cup, which is very understandable. So it's all these things come into play. It's never exactly straightforward. So it's different situations for each decision, but it's always tricky. The handicaps as well are a nightmare. It's a bit of a stick of pin that you're hoping to be on the better one or two, but that mightn't be the best of the 30 that are in the race, so it makes no difference.
Yeah, handicaps a nightmare indeed. Okay, we can roll on to the next question. We actually got this question a little while ago from one of our viewers, and for the life of us, we cannot find who sent it in, but we kept it in the back of our minds because it was such a good question. So if you're watching now, thank you very much. But the question is, which has the stronger team going to Cheltenham? The Donnellys or Cheveley Park? Tony, it's over to you first. I thought about this for quite a while, and I think I sided with Cheveley Park in the end. Which way did you go?
Yeah, I think I went Cheveley Park narrowly. They just seem to have maybe one or two more than the Donnellys, and I suppose they do have Violin, who is possibly going to be the shortest price of anything at the meeting. So I would shade them, but there wouldn't be an awful lot in it. And then I suppose you could give the Donnellys another factor to do with the Gold Cup favourite going for a third Gold Cup, so that might trump everything.
It kind of does trump everything, doesn't it? But yeah, Barry, which way would you go? Donnellys or Cheveley Park if you had to ride for one team or the other?
I'd say then I go with Donnelly's to right album photo. Envoy Allen is the strongest one of either team for the meeting, and Shishkin is probably next best. But I think Cheveley Park with album photo is a stronger number 2, if you like, to any of the number 2s that Cheveley Park have.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, well that leads us on nicely to our next question actually, because Philip Hill has asked, pick your nap for the festival. You can't pick the same horse. So I went with Zanahiyr in the Triumph. The closer we get to the race, the more I'm liking him. And I settled on him for you, Philip. Zanahiyr for me. Barry, you please.
I went Envoy Allen, and he's probably not a bad price as he stands, because Anorgamine and Monkfish are second and third in the betting, and they're not going to go there. So you're looking at Shan Blue, Sporting John, Alart. I think he's streets ahead of what's going to be left in the race, so he's probably not a bad price if you want to play one short.
There you go. And Tony, what was your view on that question, please?
The first thing, I would agree 100% with what Barry's saying. Someone else asked me this question about which one of those 3 favourites for the novice chase is the best bet, in the sense of which is going to shorten the most. I would say it has to be Envoy Allen, purely because of the fear factor. I know maybe the UK trainers might want to take him on, but I don't think any of the Irish trainers want to take him on. I think they've seen enough of him at this point. So yeah, he'd be the one I would see as shortening, maybe more than Shishkin, who has a very meaningful rival. Sorry, Philip, I don't really like the question. I'm not going to give you a straight answer. I'm sorry, because nap at the meeting this Monday will be different to next Monday, different to the following Monday. The prices change and stuff like that. So I have different opinions week to week, which is a good bet. Something that was a good bet a month ago may not be a particularly good bet now. I'll tell you the horse I've backed during this week. It's a horse I've changed my mind on. It's a horse in the Ballymore. The Ballymore's a sort of a race there. Every year at the festival, there's races there around this time where you can start having a look at the prices and the percentages and stuff, and you can see that they're not really adding up, in the sense that there's loads of horses in the betting that aren't going to run or are likely to go elsewhere, one thing or another. And usually the Ryanair is a great race for this, because there's Gold Cup and Champion Chase horses in the betting. But funnily enough, I think this year's Ryanair could be different. There seems to be quite a lot of horses that are going to run. But I think the Ballymore this year, outside the front 3 in the market, it's hard to settle on another definite runner. There seems to be no depth in the race, so you can definitely make a case for backing any of the front 3. But the one I came down, and I've changed my mind on this horse, to be quite honest, I was maybe a bit negative on him when he won in the Ace, is Bob Ollinger. I think he's got marginally the best form at the moment. The only horse that have beaten him is the Champion Bumper winner last year, who we know ties in with the Supreme Favourite. So that's a positive. You've also got the fact that he's beaten Blue Lord roughly the same distance as Appreciated. Now, there are reasons why Blue Lord didn't run to his best at Naas. He was a bit free, but also at Leopardstown when he kind of got a bit behind. So I think in the wash he probably comes out pretty even. That Bob Ollinger's probably run to a reasonable level, same as Appreciated. But I think the big thing with Bob Ollinger is that his scope to improve. Like, he only had his first race last March. Like, some of these horses, like Brave Man's Game, had a couple of runs and bumpers. Gaillard de Mani had plenty of racing in France. But this horse, one run in a bumper from a trainer that doesn't win bumpers, loads of scope to improve. And I come back to that Naas form. I thought Barry made a very good point that the Gabby Nacco that pitched up in Naas was probably the best version of him. It was the first day he really settled. I think Flank and Manoeuvre, the fourth's a really solid horse. Blue Lord we've already mentioned. So I backed him each way there. 4s, non-runner, no bet. I think it was this morning. I just think that's okay, and I think he has the little bit of potential to shorten. So that'd be my best bet, I suppose, as things stand today.
Like it. Bob Ollinger it is. That's a lot more detailed and in-depth than myself and Barry, so that is good. Viewers, what's your nap of the festival? Please get involved as always. Let us know who you like at a short price or a big price, who you're taking on, who you want to be with, who you don't want to be with. Get involved, please. And whilst we're on the topic of the Cheltenham Festival, it's now time to preview another one of the big races, as it's only 4 weeks to go until the big meeting in March. We've already done the Gold Cup and we've already done the Cheltenham, the Champion Hurdle. And so today, we're going to do the Stayers Hurdle, a division I really like, and there's lots to get stuck into. At the moment, you have Paisley Park at 100 to 30, Time Hill at 4 to 1. You've got the likes of Roxana at bigger at 10s, Ronald Pump at 14s. Tony, straight over to you, because last week you made a very valid case, very So I was very taken with the case for the Storyteller, a much bigger price. I think he's about 20s with Bet365 currently. Are you still with the Storyteller at a much bigger price? Who are you liking? Anti-post. Who are you not liking, please?
Yeah, I actually had made that case before I properly studied the race. I had a good look at it last week. I suppose one of the key questions is, what do you think of the Ascot form, as in who's going to come out on top between Time Hill and Paisley Park? And having looked back at it, I think Paisley Park will come out on top again. I thought he could be a little bit shorter and Time Hill could be a little bit bigger. Paisley Park has run one bad race in the last 2.5 years, which was totally explainable in this race last year. And at Ascot, the section time said he's actually done really well to pick up the Philip Hobbs horse, along with the bit of trouble that he's gotten. So yeah, I think he would be doing. I'm just throwing this out there, and maybe I'm reading something into nothing, but has Time Hill got a little bit of a quirk in him? There's a brief moment there on the second circuit at Ascot where I think he takes a little think about running out at one of the hurdles. I think, hasn't he flashed a tail or something in the shallow? I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not fully convinced that it's not a dogmatic case, but I'm just open to the fact that there is a little quirk there. But I would slightly favour Emma Lavelle's horse. Of the others at the front end of the market, I think you've Sire de Bear. I've made the case for the Storyteller. I think Sire de Berle has a chance. Be a couple of little negatives with him. One thing is they haven't got the option to go to the blinkers again. I think the blinkers worked really well when they put them on him in the Pertemps final last year, so that's not really there. But he won really well in Navan. And I thought the win over 2.5 first time up was a really good performance, and Leopardstown race didn't really run to suit. Flooring Porter, hard to make all, got a bit of a cheap lead. Trainer made an interesting point about him, is he can play the hang a little bit, and there's parts of that course that maybe there isn't a running rail, which might not suit. To me, Roxana would kind of be held on the Ascot form. What else have you got in there? McFabulous, Paul Nicholls seems to be saying he's going for the Fontwell race, and unless that's absolutely bottomless there, he's not really thinking of Cheltenham. He's planning to go to Aintree, maybe when a few of the rivals are softened up, which is fair enough. His argument was these suit a flat track, so does he really want to be going to a track that maybe doesn't fully suit him? What else have we got there? Ronald Pump, yeah, don't really think that last year's form is up to much. He's coming to the race, on a little bit of an interrupted preparation. Willie Mullins mentioned Kemboy going for the race. Seems like a little bit of an afterthought. You'd argue the same with the Storyteller, but I think this has been the plan all along with the Storyteller to go for the Steers hurdle. Although I suppose they could take a chance of putting him into the Gold Cup, but this is the only entry he has at the moment. Sam's Profile, I suppose, is the one that's a little bit left field. A very tough horse, obviously. This thing about him overcoming broken ribs and stuff, and he raced with the broken ribs amazingly at Fairyhouse, so he might have needed to run a little bit in Gore on the last day, but he would still have an awful lot to find. So I'm happy enough with the Storyteller. Again, come back to my argument last year. I think the stay-in chasers, as a rule, are always better than the stay-in hurdlers. They're definitely better than them at the minute. He's in there. He might be just on the cusp of the top 10 stay-in chasers around. That should be enough to get involved in a Steers hurdle. He's proven at the course. Plenty of good runs at the meeting. Seems better than ever. I would like Keith Donoghue to ride him. He seems to get a particularly good tune out of him, and hopefully he will.
Brilliant. Liked it last week, still like it this week, Tony. And yeah, Keith, I think he's ridden him 8 times, won on in 6 times or something ridiculous, and finished second on him once. So yeah, terrific record. Barry, I am a big Roxana fan on the basis that now she's settled at the staying trip. I think she is just improving race on race. I know she was only against the mares last time, but she did it any which way she liked. And for me, I think they'll run her here. I don't think they'll go for the mares route. She obviously gets the allowance, and that's going to bring her closer with Paisley Park and Time Hill. What's your view on this race? Where are you settling? And also, who do you think brings in the strongest form line for you? Is it here in the UK with Paisley Park and Time Hill?
I think that is the strongest form. They're 2 very good horses. The Ascot race, they didn't go that hard early. They had the pace to pick up, going away from the stands into Swindley Bottom. And Time Hill was just running a little bit with the choke out. I think that's a little bit of his problem. He just needs to relax better. He travelled well and probably got competitive earlier than ideal and just didn't see it out as well as Paisley Park. But on the other hand, Paisley Park was tapped for toe before the turn in, got a bit squeezed and had to come back from there, and he finished really well. So in an end-to-end gallop, you'd imagine they're getting the Stairs hurdle. And And with it being such a tough track, it's going to play to Paisley Park's strengths. So I think he is the one to beat, and he'd be hard to beat. The only slight negative on him, for me, Tony mentioned he won bad run in 2.5 years. He's 9 from 14 over hurdles. He was second 3 times, and he was unplaced twice, both times at the festival. So he's turned up in one festival of 3. That's the only slight concern on him. If he didn't have that, I'd say he would be rock solid, and he's probably good value. But you'd just like to think the best Paisley Park turns up, because I think that will win. Time Hill is a very good horse, but I'm just not fully convinced he sees it out as well as he might need to. I thought Fury Road, who was only a nose behind Time Hill last year in the Albert Bartlett and a neck behind Monkfish, he's about 20 to 1. He ran bad at Christmas, just disappointed slightly, beaten 9 lengths behind Floating Porter at Christmas when Gordon's horses weren't running well. And you've seen some of Gordon's runners at the Dublin Festival faring out better than they had done previously. So I think there's improvement in him. He could be value each way. But for me, it's Paisley Park is definitely by far the one to beat. Roxana, she is value at maybe a 12 to 1 to run well, but it's hard to see her turn the tables at Paisley Park.
Okay, I take your points on board, Barry Geraghty. Thank you very much. Viewers, what do you think? Are you with me with Roxana? Are you with Tony with the Storyteller? Barry with Fury Road? Or anyone else? I think we all have a resounding tick next to the favourite, but of course, the favourite in Paisley Park, but of course you try and look elsewhere for a bit of value. And those are our thoughts on the staying hurdling division at the moment. 4 weeks out to the Cheltenham Festival, the countdown is well and truly on. Tony, it's time for this week's section of the show of offence, but actually I'm not sure you've taken great offence to anything this week. Where are we going this week? Where are you taking us? Because last week we really rocked a few boats, you know.
Did we? What did we give out of it last week? No, there's no one to be offended this week. This is a praise section this week. I suppose by its nature on this show, we do tend to talk a lot about the big two. I suppose the big 2.5, the big 3 in Ireland, Mullins, Elliott, the Bromhead. Just looking there, I think we've 88 graded races run so far in Ireland this year, non-handicaps, and the 3 fellas between them have won 71 of them, so it's understandable we do talk a lot about them, but just wanted to, with a quieter week in terms of the really top class racing, a couple of yards I want to mention that have been doing good work maybe that aren't as obvious. The first one, Tom Gibney, he actually just creeps inside the top 10 in terms of winners trained. That probably doesn't mean just as much as it would have meant maybe 10 or 15 years ago when there was a more even spread of winners, but he's going well. He's a couple of good young horses. Another one than won today, Velvet Elvis. He looks a very good young stayer. He's another nice horse there in Alco Rouge. He's going well, having a very good year. I think Creo best year will be a good distance. Another little stat I like to look up sometimes is the winner to runner ratio. So that kind of means that if a trainer has, say, 20 individual horses run over the season and 10 of them win, they have a 50% winner to runner ratio. It's a kind of a stat, I suppose, to me that would be keeping as many owners happy as possible, because usually if you can get a win, that'll keep most people happy. Like Willie Mullins would be, of the trainers that would run a meaningful amount of horses, would be the best this season at 50%. But there's another couple of trainers there going well. Liz Dial is doing well on that front. Mouse Morris having a kind of a small resurgence there, having a good year on that front. Tom Mullins, another person doing well there. And just in the handicap sphere, I just want to reference a couple of yards. The Dot Love, Kieran Murphy set up there have done really well in handicaps this year, particularly how they've got 2 wins out of this, and Joy Dallin, because when it was previous yard he looked a really tricky customer, looking at some of his in-running trades, awful stuff, really getting beaten at short odds every day. He's won 2 for them. He looks to be thriving at the moment. And a new sort of trainer on the block here, Owen Christopher McCarthy, 20% strike rate in handicaps this season. He's at 3 horses, Matty's Mountain, Moonlight Glory and Blanket on the ground, all winning 2 handicaps. That Blanket on the ground to me looks like one that could continue on the up. So just to mention those yards, like sometimes we do get swamped with all the big fellas and talking how they're doing, but they're just some names that to me are having good seasons and maybe deserve a little bit of recognition.
Love that, Tony Keenan. You see, that's why I'm sure you're a brilliant teacher, because you know, praising the good stuff. I love that. Shout out to the little people, the smaller yards, and it's great to hear. Great to hear indeed. There'll be some names in there that a lot of those our viewers probably never even heard of at this point. So yeah, good to acknowledge them. And that leads us nicely on to looking ahead to the next 7 days of racing, which of course is busy in the UK and Ireland, but the UK specifically is where we're going to concentrate. Lots of rescheduled races, Barry Geraghty. We're going to head straight over to the Ascot Chase, obviously live on Sky Sports Racing. I'm such a company woman. Barry, when you're looking at this race, we're 5 days out at the moment. We've got Master Tommy Tucker, Cyrname, St Calvados, good few names in there. What did you make of the race when you had a look at it at this point, please?
Well, Cyrname loves around Ascot, and he has the strongest level of form, so for me he is the one. Master Tommy Tucker has been winning nicely, but he got well stuffed on soft ground behind Chatham Street Lad in Cheltenham, which is to throw a question mark about him for me. And I thought St Calvados was a horse. His Ryanair form is obviously very good. I thought he was the biggest danger to Cyrname, but for me it'd be Cyrname to beat.
Cyrname for me as well. I think Master Tommy Tucker scares me far too much with his jumping. One of the horses who has a couple of entries is Lostintranslation, who also has an entry in the Denman Chase, but it looks like he's going to have to take on the likes of Clan de Zobo and others in there. We've spoken about Lostintranslation plenty on this show, Barry, and we always come back to the point that he really just needs to show something now, but it has come out from the Tizard Yard that a few of their horses have been under the weather for the season. They've obviously had a bit of a torrid time. Turning a corner now. For me, Lostintranslation, important horse for the Gold Cup. I need to see something more from him, but do you think he can overturn an on-form Clan de Zobo in the Denman Chase?
I think there's a chance. The ground is probably the biggest key there. It's given us good to soft in places in Newbury for the weekend. So if it is that way, the chase track in Newbury is usually a little bit better than the hurdle track. So if it is that way for Sunday at Newbury, and he is back to form, I don't see any reason why he couldn't trouble Clan de Zobo, and it could have put him back into the picture for the Gold Cup.
Yeah, I'd like that. Would definitely add a little bit of spice to the Anti-Post Gold Cup market. Also, the Tizards looking forward to seeing the big Breakaway. We've covered him well on this show in the past. Plenty of talent in the tank. Still a big green horse and on a learning curve. Hopefully we'll see him back on track this weekend. But Barry, really want to rattle through all of that to focus on Champ and the decision to run the Game Spirit, dropping it back to the 2 miles. Lots of sort of varying reasons for this, and I just wanted to know, you know this horse better than anyone. What's your view on that? How do you think it'll go? What is the thinking behind it? Explain it all, please.
Well, it's his first run back. He has been away working and schooling, had racecourse gallops and school and everything, so he has a good bit of work done. But the 3 mile in Newbury on his first run, when he could be a bit fresh and a bit keen, was felt it wasn't ideal. So dropping him back to 2 is what's going to be done. It's probably he's caught between a rock and a hard place, I think, with the 2, and the 2 mile is going to obviously be sharp enough for him. He's 4 from 4 around Newbury, and he won the Challow Hurdle there at grade 1 over 2.5. But it's going to test his jumping, and the better the ground, I think the bigger the test on both his jumping and less of a test on stamina, which won't be in his favour too much. So he has a little bit to do now. A green teen, I think, will be the one he has to beat. Obviously no Altior, which makes it a little bit easier for him, but it's going to be work for him. But it'll be interesting to see how he comes through it. I suppose Nicky's thinking is the most important thing, is to get him out, to get a run, and to have him where he wants him going to the Gold Cup, not to run him and have him on his knees for 2 weeks and try to get him back for the Gold Cup. So the Gold Cup is his main target. Albeit he'd love to win on Sunday, but Sunday is you know, it's stepping stone towards the Gold Cup, so that would be the thinking behind it. But it's 2 mile, it's going to be sharp enough on what's reasonable enough ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that listening to a few interviews with Nicky throughout the week, just when he's explaining the rationale behind it, you very much get the impression this is just a stepping stone. So I don't think if he was to be beaten by anything else, I'm not entirely sure, as long as he jumped and travelled well, that the team would be that disappointed. But it's the jumping I'm a bit worried about. Could it put him back in the jumping department if it all goes a bit Pete Tong at the weekend and he gets rushed off his feet? That's not going to be a good place to be in going to the Gold Cup.
No, that is the rock and the hard place. You know, it could work out brilliantly. He jumps brilliantly. Everton's super. But if it goes the other way, it's not ideal. But he has to get a run in. So you're it's just one of those decisions. He's tight for time. things are stacking up against him. So it needs to go right for him, because it's going to have a massive effect on him next. But likewise, if the Denman was the option, if that didn't go right for him either, that's going to work against him. So it's, it's the clock is what he's battling more than anything, but he needs things to happen right for him on Sunday in Newbury.
And this decision has all been tied in, Barry, with not tied in, I suppose it's two separate paragraphs, but Altior not running in the Game Spirit and going straight to the Cheltenham Festival. Do you think that is a positive for him, or would you be viewing that as a touch of a negative at this stage?
No, as Nicky said in his interviews, and it would have been the same before with Bobsworth. Bobsworth won the Hennessy, the old Hennessy in Newbury, and he didn't run again until the Gold Cup, because like Altior, he gives so much in his races, and you get to the bottom of them, they don't recover as quickly. You're on a bit of a rebound, if you like. So I think the week from what would have been Newbury last weekend to Newbury this weekend coming, Nicky just felt the turnaround wasn't enough for Altior. So he knows his horse better, and there is no better trainer to get one ready for Cheltenham. And we've slagged him off, or he's been slagged off on the show before about trying to find the ideal race, but this is why, because he wants to have his horse peak for the middle of March, and he wants him to get over his previous run in enough time that he can peak him and have him where he wants him. So it's the attention to detail, and that's what sets him apart.
No man better, really, for getting him to peak for the middle of March than Nicky Henderson. Barry, just a quick line from you on the Kingwell Hurdle with Goshen and Song for Someone. Again, two horses we've talked about plenty on this show. I'd be with Song for Someone here if he tips up.
Yeah, the going in with Canton is heavy, which is a big plus for Goshen, and going right-handed as well. But it's a flatter, sharper track than Sandown would have been for Goshen. So, it's going to be interesting to see how he fares out. Song for Someone goes there on the back of 3. He's done brilliantly. He's won on heavy ground. He's won on sharp tracks. He sets a proper benchmark for Goshen. So it'll be very interesting as well to see how that gives us a line of form on him. But it also with Navajo Pass, I think he's called, the horse to beat Bouvier in Haydock.
Nearly, Barry, well done. Good, 10 points for trying.
Nearly, yeah. Well, there you go. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares out, because that's going to give us a line of Bouvier. But Goshen is the one, of most interest, really. But Song for Someone is going to be hard to beat. Yeah,
likes of Goshen, Lost in Translation, kind of the big breakaway too. Big performance, and Champ, of course. Big performances from these horses this weekend could really shake up a few markets.
I think if the cap fits could turn it around with the big breakaway on the Kempton run. They were second and third. If the cap fits was never on the bridle, and I think the stiffer track in Ascot's going to play it well to him, who ran really well behind Yalenki in Taunton over 3.5. So he's crying out for a stiff track. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him turn around.
If the cap fits for you against Big Breakaway, like it a lot. Right, I think that gets us to the end of the show, just about. That has flown by. Hopefully we've covered lots of topics. But before we go, of course, it is tracker time for you all. We've given you loads of winners. We just give you loads of winners, basically. And when we say we actually just mean Tony Keenan. My tracker horse for this week, courtesy of the fact we saw more flat racing than jumps action, is a flat horse. So controversial, I know. Stick Dark Pine in your tracker for David Loughnane, now won 2 on the bounce, having left Dermot Welds. David Loughnane, trainer on the upgoing places, and this horse will get another hike in the weights, having just won last time out again, following a £6 hike in the weights. He'll get another big hike, but he's still on the right. I think he'll still be on the right side of the handicapper, essentially. David's really got a handle on him, thinks the world of him. So Dark Pine, there you go. Probably won't be listed in the market, but I'll be with him when he next appears on an all-weather track somewhere in a low-grade race. But there you go, a winner's a winner. Barry, who's your tracker horse, please? Reveal all.
Yeah, I thought the big dog at the weekend in Punchestown, he did really well. He travelled by far the best. It was his first win over fences, but just Jamie Codd got to the front with him soon enough, going to 3 out. He missed the third last, untidy at the second last. He got headed at the back of the last, and Jamie lost his stirrups, and he rallied to get back up. So I think with a smoother passage through the race, and maybe if he delayed his challenge a little bit longer, he could have been a comfortable winner. The handicapper's only given him £8 for this. It was obviously interesting that Jamie rode him, whether that's a view to the 4 mile chase at Cheltenham, but Gordon has Galvin there at the head of the market, so I'd imagine Jamie would be in demand there. But if he wasn't to go for the formal where he's about £12 wrong, I think with Galvin, he might fare better in the Irish Grand National of 144. So he could be of interest in a race like that.
Just a side note on that, because I love that performance as well. But just from a jockey's point of view, how relieved are you to win when you've got down to think, was Jamie not as his lowest weight ever, loses his iron in the last sort of half a furlong and had to cajole the horse around for 3.5 miles. The relief crossing the line must have been huge for Jamie.
Oh, that's a get out of jail card when that happens. You think at the back of the last, lose your stirrup. You're after probably running for miles, sweating, everything, and then he just gets back going again. It's just relief. You hug him and kiss him, and as in the horse, yeah.
Tony, who's your tracker horse this week, please?
Same meeting, going to go with Casey West. He was second in the first division of the maiden hurdle. He's one of these point-to-point horses that probably wouldn't be running on the routes at the minute if the wear points gone on. But I thought this was definitely the stronger of the two divisions of that maiden, the better time. He kind of had started off, I think, with the intention of having him in midfield, but he wasn't too good at the first two hurdles, and he was nearly last after a couple of furlongs, which was basically an impossible position to come from in an Irish maiden hurdle in such a big field. And his hurdling was not brilliant actually the whole way around, but he had to gradually make up ground the whole way through the second circuit. Did it quite well, and got involved from 3 out to 2 out, and was just beaten by a more forward-ridden winner. Came second. I think he's probably able to win a maiden hurdle. Maiden hurdles tend to get quite weak at this time of the year, coming up against maybe various horses who've been frustrating, whereas he looks like a horse on the up, quite well bred, and I think there's a maiden hurdle in him around 2.5 miles.
Love it. There you go. And when Tony gives us a tracker horse, you know not to ignore it. So Casey West in the tracker, the big dog for Barry, and Darkheim for me. That brings the show to an end for another week. Thank you very much for watching. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like us, comment, retweet, whatever you fancy. Get involved, send your questions in. Thank you very much for watching. That was Off the Fence, brought to you by Bet365.